All right. So very good morning and a warm welcome to all of you who have logged in to participate in today's webinar on data privacy and protection. Today's digital world, with more and more data being created and captured, protecting personal and sensitive data has become a critical concern for individuals and organizations alike. These digital nuggets of information are a gold mine for today's data-oriented business environment. However, this race to profit from customer data also opens up vulnerabilities through which the data gathered can be abused if organizations are not responsible or sort of properly set up to handle all of that data. Therefore, implementing privacy and security in the design of the product or services the organization offers is imperative to boost customer confidence, avoid legal liability, maintain regulatory compliance, and reduce the risk of penalties. But how can organizations effectively incorporate this by design approach into their businesses? As in-house legal counsel, it is imperative to stay abreast of the latest developments in this field and implement best practices to keep your organization safe. So today, we will delve into the Indian legal framework for data privacy and protection and discuss key takeaways and practical tips for in-house legal counsel to ensure that their organizations are in compliance and secure. To discuss these issues and to provide all of you with a very practical perspective, we have got together a panel with expertise in this area. So I'm going to introduce the panelists to you one by one. Our first panelist is Akanksha Pawar Kamthe. Akanksha has over 12 years of experience and is working with Novartis as legal counsel and is a certified DCPLA, certified privacy lead assessor from Data Security Council of India. She is a senior legal professional with extensive experience of working in various domains of IT, pharma, and financial sector. Our next panelist is Denise Gardner. With over 12 years of experience, Denise is currently the head of legal, secretarial, and compliance at Licious. Denise has previously worked with renowned companies like MedLife, Zydus Group, Infibeam, Unacademy, and Kitchen Express. And of course, our final panelist is Siddharth Gupta. Siddharth is a certified information privacy professional, Europe, CIPPE, CIPM, and ISO 27701 lead implementer. He has worked extensively on data privacy projects with clients across a range of industries, including technology, banking, and travel. So Siddharth's going to provide us with the perspective of a DP professional who's advising multiple corporates on how to stay compliant with the data privacy legal framework. All right, so please join me in giving a very warm welcome to all of our panelists. Akanksha, Denise, and Siddharth, we are delighted that you could make time for today's session, and I'm looking forward to really having a very, very productive session where our learners will get to take away practical learnings from, and they can benefit from the experience that the three of you will be sharing with us today. All right. So to kick off our discussion, I thought the best way to kind of really kick this off would be to kind of have each of you share your experience of the sort of common data security and privacy challenges that businesses face when dealing with customer data. Of course, data privacy covers a very large spectrum, not just customer data, but what are some of the challenges that you have seen from a customer data perspective, which you could share with us? Akanksha, maybe we could kick off with you. You're in a pharma organization, so maybe that perspective would definitely be very helpful for our learners.
Definitely. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Rainmaker Antony, for arranging this session. Today, the major understanding or data, what we say, is a new oil in the IT field or in the economy as such. We are not even aware that we have a data that has a value with us and it is going to impact our business. We handle it on a daily basis. Maybe it's not just the top management, but even if you are at a grassroots level, you handle a quite huge amount of data that could be very important for an organization to grow, to nurture and sustain. But unfortunately, we aren't aware about its value totally. And in the Indian sector, I totally would say that the awareness about the importance of data, which we have really is low at an overall industry or overall across the entire company level. So that is one of the challenge, the awareness amongst each and every individual, each and every employee, that you are handling a data and you are a critical resource who can actually build the company's trust, or you who can actually be a keystone to destroy that trust. So making the importance, knowing the importance of each and everybody's contribution to the data is important, and that's one of the key challenges. I do think that we have overall in the Indian sector, not just Indian sector, anywhere where we go, in a corporate or any companies. So that is one of the challenge to make each, I feel. Second is the threat because of the lack of awareness or lack of misuse of the data that is there from a security perspective. And when we say that we are technology savvy, or we have a technology is there, technology will build you. But what we need to understand is data is your asset. You need to build on your asset, you need to protect your asset. Data privacy or a data is kind of your new IP. So you need to understand how to access it, who can access it, and how to give it a flow, or how you are going to manage its security. You don't give your copyrights easily, right? You protect it, you make sure that it's not going to leak outside your company. Why do you do that? Because you understand that IP is going to bring money inside. Similarly, data is not just going to bring money inside, but it is also going to bring the customer's trust along with itself to you. It is also going to give you a branding effect to your organization. And it is going to build your culture. It's going to show how you behave with such a important assets, and it's how your customers are going to rely on you. And if that is going to get missing from each and every associate, I think that is one of the rift, or that is one of the shortfall. Then the internal department conflict because of the lack of awareness, that maybe I want more, I want more, or collecting what is not necessary. From a legal point, I understand when you draft an affidavit, for example, or when you draft an indemnity bond, you think of n number of scenarios that is going to happen just or for any of the situation, and you try to protect it, so you make the language like you make the language conflicting, you make the language quite elaborative to unnecessary, even include the scenarios that might not happen in next 100 years, but you don't want to play unsafe in this area. Similarly, the data, we are not sure whether we need that data or not, but we keep on asking. It's like, let's have it, let's collect it. But why are we collecting it? The purpose of collecting it? Or do we really need that data in next 10 years, next 5 years? Is the visibility or the understanding about what exactly is the requirement keeps on missing from each and every department in the company. And I guess that is what we need to work upon.
No, very good points, Akanksha. So basically, awareness is an area that I think lack of awareness rather is something that you highlighted. Also, the fact that one needs to be more protective about the data that you have, right? It's your IP in a sense, which is an interesting take actually on in terms of data and how people deal with it today. Fair points. Denise, you are head of legal for a D2C company, obviously handling lots and lots of data at an organization level. But even in your prior experience, you've been in similar situations where data is something that your organizations have handled. So, what's your take really on the challenges that large organizations or organizations are facing with respect to managing data?
So, Anthony, coming from a startup environment and also having worked in an MNC, at the ground level, when you have an MNC, there are already some set processes. But working in a startup, you will have people wearing multiple hats. At the same time, they will not know the in-depth information. So first and foremost, when you set up a department, or rather you are building the framework, as a legal counsel, you will have to first go ahead and see the culture, that do people understand what privacy is, or do they understand that how critical it is? Because many a times privacy, currently we are talking about the bill and a lot of other things with regard to the digital standpoint. But many a times, who is tailgating you and coming into your premises, at the same time who is having access to a lot, so you'll have a lot of tools inside your company. There would be certain information which will be kind of sensitive, but the access control over there and the building of a culture that people literally understand that yes, there is privacy, there is information which needs to be protected. So that is one. So the first stance starts off with educating and building that culture. The second position that comes in is actually making them understand what exactly is personal information, what exactly is information that needs to be protected. Because there is a lot of buzz happening around data privacy. There is a lot of talks happening. There are circulars coming in. Everybody knows what data privacy is, or rather the general concept. But exactly what is the information that the Act is trying to protect, or under the IT Act, or the bill that is coming in is trying to protect? Is that information, do we have those information? That is something which needs to be built and educated, because currently the biggest problem is people don't know what is personal information, as in the segregation actually. And another thing also, when we talk about the culture building, because in India, when you are taking an app, they ask you a number of questions. People just go ahead. I want to use the app, so I'm just giving the information. What will they do with my name and my location? Further, India at this point in time do not have any specific laws under target marketing. So a lot of people do not understand that, oh, your information can also be used for target marketing purposes and other things. That's the reason why it is considered as sensitive, because it can influence you in many of your decision if people know about a lot of details, because they will be able to customize stuff to target you. So being in the legal field of first, or rather in my in-house counsel role, it's more first is understand the culture that is there, then start the training process with regard to sensitizing everyone with regard to what exactly is privacy, what are the information that is considered as private information which you cannot share, and what are the kind of controls. Further, sit with your teams, understand what exactly you need. So privacy by design is something which is very critical, because there's a lot of information sitting. Another issue is your heat map of your company. That is something which is very critical. The first thing I always tell when I am having a conversation is, please sit with your analyst, business analyst, or please sit with your CTO or your tech people to understand where your product is available. Because a lot of people, they'll just launch it on App Store, they'll launch it on Android, and then they'll go ahead and there would not be any geo-tagging. So any person from EU, from Australia or US will be able to go ahead and access. And when they access, they will put information. So unknowingly, you will be exposed to a lot of laws. So that is also a heat map that you need to do and consciously decide where do you want the exposure to be. So that's something which, from a in-house counsel standpoint, when you are coming into a new company or a company that is already established, these are the things that you will look into to begin with, because that is basically going to help you set up your whole privacy system.
So Denise, I think a lot of useful takeaways from that, but it appears that I think the commonality to what both Akanksha and you have brought out is the fact that our country is not, our individuals or citizens of our country are not very sort of clued into what is data privacy, and we as a nation are very free in sharing the data that we have. And that obviously creates challenges for corporates, right? Because then you have to also figure out how to put in place a system, how to create awareness, how to sensitize the workforce, how to make them understand that data is also something that you need to safeguard carefully. And that, of course, then leads to other situations where the management of the organization needs to ensure that both training and awareness is there, but also kind of put in place robust systems and processes to ensure that data is sort of safeguarded. Okay, fair enough. Siddharth, you have and very one of the very interesting things about having you on this panel is the fact that you bring a different perspective uh, as somebody who's is sort of like a service provider. You advise different corporates on their policies and how best to sort of structure your policies. So in your experience, can you share some of the experiences that you've had, some of the challenges that your customers have faced while sort of implementing data privacy policies, if they have, or if they don't, then what are the challenges you see there?
Sure, Antony. Before I start, first and foremost, thank you for having me on the panel. Right. So as far as challenges that I have seen that my customers face or businesses across the industry are facing, first and foremost that comes to my mind is the multi-jurisdiction laws that we have. So I'm an Indian company, right? But I have clients who are sitting in UK, US, and Australia, right? So there are various laws which are applicable to me. What should be the solution to it? How should I create a baseline so that I'm actually compliant with all the laws, all the privacy laws, and what should be the baseline that I should collect only this much data so that I'm safe, so that I do not get fined tomorrow. So this is one thing. This is one challenge that almost each and every business which is operating across jurisdiction is facing. That how to create a baseline wherein you are compliant with all the laws that are applicable to you, all the privacy laws that are applicable to you, right? Other than that, so as the businesses are growing these days, they are bringing in more and more solutions, right? So they are automated solutions. So with the advent of automated solutions, there's a large amount of information that the businesses are collecting, and then they are profiling, and then they are using those automated solutions to conduct processing, right? So, and now it gets very tricky there, because when you are profiling on an automated basis, right, then you become a subject to many privacy regulations, right? Then you have to be quite accountable while you are doing that. But of course, you have to grow your business as well. So what should you do in such situations? So this is one more challenge that the businesses are facing, that they want to collect more and more data. They want to bring in innovation so that they can work in a very streamlined manner, right? But on the other hand, they have to be mindful that they are handling the data very responsibly, and they are accountable to whatever they are doing with the data subjects data, right? And there's one more challenge, and that is how you train your teams and how your because of course DPO office knows what the organization has to do with the data, right? But how you communicate it within the organization, how you communicate it to all the other departments, that is also important. Because I'll tell you that of course the data protection office, the DPO office knows about the data privacy principles, about purpose limitation, right? And how you have to secure the data. But once you leave the data privacy office and you go outside and you talk to other departments, you will find that usually there's a very huge gap, right? The departments do not usually know what are the limitations up to which they can process a particular set of data. So how do you bring that awareness within the organization? Because I'll tell you, Antony, I can give you the best tool, right? The best tool that is there in the market, the best innovation, the best privacy innovation that is there in the market. But if your team is not aware, right, then it is of no use. If the people who are handling data are not aware, right, if they do not believe in the principles, the normal data privacy principles like accountability, or purpose limitation or data minimization, right, then those tools won't work. So that's why data privacy is a human problem. All the problems that relate to data privacy are actually human problems, right? So when even our Supreme Court said that data privacy is a human right, right? Because whenever I as an individual I consult my clients and I tell them that these are the things that you should do. The most time that I spend is in training their teams, because that is where the entire problem lies. You might not have a policy, of course, I'll give you a policy, right? You might not have a procedure or a solution, of course, I'll give you a solution. But it is of no use until and unless there is no awareness within your organization. So that is where, the major challenge that the businesses are facing these days. And that is why more and more organizations should become aware and bring in more training capabilities and work with the DP office more closely in training their entire organization to be safe.
Fair enough, Siddharth. And I think clearly all three of you are aligned in one very fundamental aspect, which is that data privacy is more about training and creating awareness around data privacy and data protection rather than anything else. That seems to be the single biggest challenge that organizations are facing, and that is one of the things that we'll sort of really need to, every organization needs to deal with, whether you are doesn't matter what kind of an organization you are, be it B2B, B2C, but figuring out and ensuring that all your employees are properly trained is imperative. After all, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? So training every single employee is definitely a must. Okay, understood. So now moving to our next point, which is really we are seeing sort of three distinct pressures currently driving change in the personal data industry, right? We have there's some sense of consumer mistrust because they're not quite sure where their data is going. At some level, we haven't really seen the government also move quickly to put in place a framework on the data privacy law. We have had, of course, understandably, we have had multiple iterations, and it probably is a good thing if we arrive at a law that actually works and checks all the boxes. Of course, there is market competition. Everybody is, it's a cutthroat market. Every organization is trying to do one above their competitors or grow their market share faster, and so on and so forth. So now, the question that I have for all three of you is, what are companies doing to balance the use of data, which is required to grow, or which is required for growth, while simultaneously protecting consumers' privacy? Now, it's a situation where, I mean, there's, how do you really deal with this, right? You need to ensure that you need data to grow, but at the same time, you need to also protect consumers' privacy. And a very interesting, very interesting aside before I hand the mic back to you, is Apple's new privacy policy, which gives users the power to share or not share their personal data. Now, what this did was it significantly impacted, Meta. I think this power that was given in the hands of the end users may have cost Meta almost 10 billion US dollars in 2022 due to this change in Apple's privacy policy. Now, so we can start to see how either government or regulatory policies, but also how one company's privacy policy can have a significant impact on another organization, right? So again, would love to hear from all of you your thoughts in terms of how are companies balancing the use of data to grow while simultaneously protecting the end consumer. So your thoughts, maybe Akanksha, we can again kick off with you on this particular point.
Sure. And then my views over here are the data, or let's be very specific, PI, personal information. The definition of personal information, what we would hear in 90s, is different than what we know now. It is a growing definition. It will grow. As and what with new technologies, it will keep on growing. But what we all need to understand back is the basic principle of PI. The basic principle of PI is never going to change with any coming of technology, and even with coming of any ages or whatever it is going to get included into it with it. What has a company, I would suggest, is that with growing definition of PI, we are going to see lots of more legislation, lots of new policies like Apple has we have discussed, which will come up. But for my company, the most necessary thing is whether my policy whether my information is based on fair information protection principle. That is, whether whatever my policy or whether I'm collecting a PI is morally correct, whether I'm morally stand, I mean, do I have a moral right to collect those data? For example, if I am a cab company, I don't need blood groups of the people, right? Why I'm collecting that? Am I morally even allowed to collect it is what a company needs to understand. Then whether it is ethical and legal. If we all start thinking on this fair protection principle policies of us, then giving right to the end users or not is a company decision. But having a base policy over here or having a fair policy, moral policy will do two things. First, it will grow your company, or it will make your base strong, your cultural base strong. And secondly, once your culture base is strong, there will be definitely a transparency. There will be definitely, when morals and ethics comes into your policy, consumers trust building will automatically be a part of it. So just not your privacy isn't in design here, your consumer building trust is also part of this policy now, and you are growing. So that is what is important. When there will be lots of legislation, there will be changes in the definition, there will be changes in what the data will be. But if we have this basic principle imbibed very strongly in our company, let it be startup, let it be MNC, I don't think so company should fear a threat then on misusing the consumer data, or to have a um, consumer trust cliff in that sense.
Fair points, Akanksha. It's interesting that you mentioned that one should look at it from the lens of moral, ethical, and then finally legal. I don't know if how many companies would look at it from that perspective. I think it's great if because that will guide an organization in terms of how a customer would feel about the use of their data, right? If you applied the lens of moral, ethical, and legal, then you mostly will end up in the right place vis-a-vis your customers. So from a customer satisfaction perspective, I would say that that is probably, not only the right thing to do, but the smart thing to do.
Right.
Again, in today's day and age, I don't know how many companies would do that, but Denise, your perspective, I mean, do you agree with Akanksha's sort of takeaways on this in terms of applying the lens of moral, ethical, and legal? If so, do you see any challenges? Do you want to add to that?
See, from a standpoint of a company, the first thing you will try to protect is your company's brand. And that will always be when you are compliant.
Right.
So I wouldn't say go blindly into the compliance standpoint, but read the objectives, because the first thing when we talk about jurisprudence, when we talk about interpretation of statutes, the first thing we talk about is objective. Why are we getting something? Because the objective will give you what the problem is and what the act is trying to do. So even when you see to the bill, there is an explanatory note that has been given, which lists down 7 principles on which the bill has been made. Now, the principles are very simple, or rather a common sense thing, to be honest. What is privacy? What will be considered as personal information? When you collect, how do you collect? What a person should know about the information that you have collected, how you are going to use it, how you are going to store it. And at the end, the control has to be with the owner, how you use it and to what extent you use it. So from when I start building or I start working with my teams, the first approach is understand what is their requirement. Also, not just understand what your current pilot is going on about or your current product is about. Also understand that where you are planning to scale it up. As lawyers, we basically, like Akanksha was saying, when we are talking about indemnity, we think of all the situations that come in. Similarly, when you're building a product, think of all the possibilities of growth that you can think of. And for that growth, what all information you need and what all information is absolutely necessary. So when you talk about a company which has a direct consumer base, Now, depending on what you're doing, if it is an online service, all you need is your person's registered mobile number and email address. Based on that, they will log in. If you are a company who is basically having physical products which has to be delivered, you will need address, which is a one more layer. Now, in all these things, you need to sit with your team. You need to understand your product, and based on that, you need to design your privacy. So that is something which I find like it's important. Second thing, when in just a little while ago, when I said, sit with your CTO, sit with your business analyst, understand where your company is being, into which laws they are getting exposed to. So the thing that you need to also understand is, yes, your country has a specific way of dealing with privacy or particular data. Similarly, other countries will have that. Read their objectives. See what the intent is. Intent normally is similar across. Basically, the person whose information is being used should know how it is being used, where it is being used, where it is stored, and he should have the control of how you use it. So once you understand the objective, once you get the objective, build your internal policies in such a manner that all the touch points are covered. So that in future, if there is a change in law, your tweaking is very limited. It's not today, if you come to a platform, if I'm asking certain questions, my privacy policy should tell you exactly what I'm going to do with it. And if you don't want to me to use it, then what is the option that you have? Once you have these basics put in, then it's just a small, maybe minor tweaking that you will have to do once the actual law comes in. And like the current bill also talks about that if the company who is collecting your information is not providing you satisfactory resolutions, then you have an option to go to the board. So first option is always given to the company, give your grievance officer, give your complaints, put your complaints mechanism. So it's more from the standpoint of the basics of what is there and how you want to internally build it. And once you cover the basis, I don't think it should be much of a problem, even when the laws get tweaked a bit.
That's very interesting, Denise, because what you're advocating clearly is that the data privacy policy of a company should primarily be customized around the products and solutions or services that the company sells, or is known for, or is putting out there. So it is not a one size fits all approach for everybody.
Yes.
Essentially, you need to really apply your mind while creating your organization's data privacy policy. Of course, bearing the cardinal principles in mind, but at the same time ensuring that you have built it which is customized to your organization. So there is no generic policy that somebody can hand to you and say, hey, listen, take this, plug it in. You still have to apply your mind, sit with the business folks, and then create something that is customized to the organization's culture. Of course, the other point being also the country that you're operating in. If it's outside of India, that of course, that goes without saying that you need to also comply with the law there, and also maybe any other aspect while
Just
creating
to
a policy.
add one thing, transparency in all these things, what you're doing, transparency will play a key, because that will build a trust. And at the same time, I wouldn't say tweaking would be required when an organization is picking up. You can't just pick and copy paste somebody else's privacy to your system, because today address is important for me. Similarly, a person who is in the online space, for them address is not important because the delivery is online. It's a digital delivery. So yes, customization will be required, because when you are doing clinical trials, for that matter, you need far more information than what, and you have your consent forms and you have other laws that are there with regard to privacy. So transparency, covering your bases with regard to your objectives, along with that, understanding your business and the requirements is what I would say is the base while building your framework.
Agreed, and that's really practical sort of takeaways for our audience, because that's really what you need to bear in mind. A lot of, I think, legal counsels make the mistake of just taking a draft that somebody has shared with them and putting their company's name on it and saying, okay, fine, now we have our privacy policy. But it's a lot more than that. So fair enough. Siddharth, you are a you are somebody who advises customers, corporate customers. Do you agree with Denise's inputs and feedback? And what's your take on this?
Yeah, so thank you again, Antony. So as we started the discussion, so first I would like to discuss about, you said consumer misfit, right? So we'll have to understand the consumer in India. So right now what I see, that the consumer who is actually concerned about their privacy in India, you will say, I can say that privacy right now for the consumer is more of an elitist topic. I'll be very fair in saying so, because even if right now I go out and I ask around people and I just ask them for their Aadhaar numbers or their PAN numbers, right? I can collect many of them and just give them to you. Information is so easily accessible in India right now. So when your consumer is not aware, so even if I have just promised jobs to people and just ask them for their Aadhaar cards or their PAN card, they will not ask me why. They'll just be very readily, they'll provide that information to me. So right now, this is the demography, and you'll have to understand that this is the kind of situation that we are living in, that people are very readily, they want to give away their PII if you are giving them the services that they need, right? So in such a situation, we cannot expect the consumer to be accountable for their own PII. So that is why the onus lies on businesses now, that at least they are ethical with the data that they are capturing, that they are taking from data subjects. Because the kind of country we live in right now, because the demography that's there, the consumers are very desperate in a way. I'll be very fair in speaking. So now when it comes to businesses, so a law is very important. That is why I believe that that India should have gotten a privacy law as like around 15 to 20 years back, right? But till now we do not have it, but we should have it quite soon now, so that the businesses can be held accountable, right? So that they can start so that they can start at least being compliant. And as far as privacy is concerned, this is something that I said previously as well. So as we see in EU, right, companies are trying to be GDPR compliant, right? And those companies which are trying to be GDPR compliant, they are being fined left, right, and center. You do not have to be GDPR compliant, you have to be privacy enabled. And what does being privacy enabled means? That you will have that whatever you do, whatever business you do, you will have to keep the data subject at the center of it. Because all the privacy laws are there to protect the data subject's data. And when you have a data subject which is as vulnerable as we have in India, it becomes more important for the businesses to ensure that the data subject is protected, right? And for that, they will need, and for that, what right now businesses can do is that first they can, of course, opt for standards. That is ISO 27701 that we have, right? And we have one very soon that is coming for privacy by design. So it will come in the month of February only, right? Other than that, we have, of course, industry best practices. They can refer to GDPR, and then they can create a solution for themselves so that they can protect the data subject while they are processing their personal data. So, yeah. So, and while they are doing so, it is also important to keep in mind that even when the law comes, and if the organization already has a robust data privacy policy in place, which is more focused on data subject and because it cannot happen in a day, Antony. The organization will have to evolve. Like, so it is not that tomorrow I'll just create a policy and I'll implement it in my company and I'll become privacy compliant. I'll be like, okay, all my data subjects are safe now. No, it does not work like that. Every organization evolve in privacy. So while they are evolving, and whenever the law will come, right? It will be very easier for them to adopt it then. Thank you.
Thanks, Siddharth. So, very interesting. I think, from what you said, I was just thinking that we Indians, as a country, we need a lot more training on how to protect our own personal data. And I think we are, but the other aspect that I think is coming out is the fact that we are also very comfortable trading our data in return for, let's say, using something at no cost or at minimal cost, right? So Indians, I think, have always been comfortable with that. Okay, you take my information, sorry, but as long as I'm able to, get value out of it. So maybe there is something about us that, while the government is trying to protect the consumer, you never know. Maybe the consumer knows what he or she wants and is very comfortable trading their data for something else in return. We don't know. I mean, we can only speculate. But definitely, I think the government has had a need to step in. And when you mentioned, the fact that the government is actually protecting the data subject, it brought me to another statute which was passed a long time ago, which is the Consumer Protection Act. And in many ways, it feels like the government is trying to protect the end consumer from sort of giving away their data or from the data being misused and so on and so forth. So anyway, being privacy enabled, I think that's a great takeaway, right? Don't just blindly say that I'm GDPR enabled, rather be privacy enabled and keep the data subject at the right in the center of any policy that you are creating. Fair enough. I think that's very valuable feedback and takeaway. So therefore, to kind of move to the next point really covers, we know that a lot of data breaches happen, or some data breaches happen due to human error. Therefore, building a data security awareness program is now essential to protect your organization, right? So what broad points could you share, maybe as either for others who are in a position similar to yours, let's say heads of legal, or those who are advising third parties, or a DPO or a CIO? What would you say? Let's say, like, if you were to create a blueprint, what are some of the 3 or 5 key takeaways for those individuals, on how to train your employees on data security measures? Siddharth, maybe we can reverse the flow and start with you. What are the few things that you would tell, or advise on what are the key takeaways? Yeah.
So the best approach as far as creating a secure data privacy environment within your organization is that you should have a two-pronged solution. So first is you train your employees, right? Create a privacy awareness. Your DPO team and your training team, they should work cohesively. They should work together, and they should roll out emailers which make your employees more and more aware about phishing attempts, right? And how they have to handle the sensitive consumer data, and how they have to handle the consumer data, right? So consumer awareness is very important. So that is one exercise that should continue throughout the year, right? And it should not stop. The second is technology. So you should have solutions in place like DLP, access management, right? Data classification, data retention. Because not everything can be done by humans, and it is always good that you have these technological solutions in place, because when you have these solutions in place, they are always a reminder to the end user as well, so that there is never a human error. Because if I'm writing an email and I can see that there's a confidential tag, or if that I can tag it confidential, right? So it will be easier for me to stay aware that this is the data which should not go outside of the company, right? And if it is even if it is going outside of the company, then it should be marked confidential. Moreover, your DLP solutions also help, because whatever information is going out of the company, right? And if you are able to scan it in a way before it leaves your organization, so you'll be able to, first of all, protect yourself during a breach as well, because you will know what all data has gone out, right? And who is the actual who are the actual end users to whom this data has been you can say breached to, right? And so a DLP solution is very important as far as data is concerned. Other than that, data retention, because it is of course a requirement of various laws that your data should be retained for certain point of time. And moreover, if you go by the data minimization principle as well and storage limitation principle as well, so data retention is also important for you if you want to be compliant, or if you want to be privacy enabled, I'll say, right? So if you have retention solutions embedded in your system, then you do not have to do everything manually. And you know that these data elements should be stored only till this point of time. These data elements should be stored only till this point of time. And what will happen after that, right? You will get them deleted, you'll get a certificate and all those things. So like I said previously, so a two-pronged approach is the best approach that I can suggest as far as a robust data privacy program is considered. Training your employees, right? And then have all the technological support.
Perfect, Siddharth. I think that is something that I think all of us would agree with. Before we go to Denise and Akanksha, my team tells me we have a quick poll happening right now that we can ask all of those who are participating here to give their inputs on. So, Namrata, could you have the poll up, please? So, in your opinion, what is the most effective way to prevent data breaches caused by human error? So it looks like most participants are of the view that 71% of the participants feel that the most effective way to prevent data breaches caused by human error is all of the above, which is regular software updates, employee training and awareness programs, and stringent security protocols. What's interesting is I think about a quarter of the people who participated felt that employee training and awareness programs are critical as well. So basically what we are saying is that human error can largely be rectified only by training humans and making sure that they are aware that these are the do's and don'ts and what have you, right? Denise, your thoughts. Do you agree with what the majority felt with respect to the poll and also on Siddharth's views that he shared a while ago? Denise, you're on mute.
Sorry. So yes, to a lot of extent, yes, but I would say these are more of a precautionary measures that we are talking about. When it actually comes to a situation where there is a breach and you need to act upon it, that time all these things take a side seat. And I have been in that situation, so I know that you would be the last person who would actually come to know that something like this has happened. And though the laws give you timelines, there are other, and I'll go towards the scarier situation rather than just the what you need to do. So the legal team will come to know maybe a day later. So your timelines with certs have already been breached. Your timelines with GDPR is like just 2 days time that you may have. In that, there are multiple information when you need to put in when there is a breach. So that is the reason why in all my conversation, I keep enforcing, speak to your business analyst, speak to your CTO, because you need to know where you're collecting information from, where your app or for that matter, website is available and people are accessing it. They will have that information. So when it actually happens, you will basically have to fill forms. CERT has now reduced the time from 24 to 6 hours, and they have literally categorized all the breaches that are that happen that you need to report. And there is a format to it. In GDPR, you have 72 hours. In 72 hours, let's take, for example, if your company is there in, say, 10 countries in the EU, and in each country, you have a substantial amount of users. You will have to file that information in every country. And in some country, so it will be in their local language. So if you are talking about UK would be there. Earlier it was there in EU, so it was English, but you go to France, it will be French. You go to Germany, it will be German. You go to Poland, it will be Polish. You will have to file, and every question is going to be different. It's not going to be same. So what information maybe Germany has asked will not be the same questions that France has asked. And their formats will be separate, their collection of information. Some are online, some are you fill the form and give it. So today you need to have a language expert, which you have to have a backend requirement for it. Second requirement that happens is the moment the breach happened, did you inform your data subjects that something like this has happened? What is the extent of breach? What happened in the breach? What is the information that got compromised? And what instructions have you given to them? Have you all given that? That also has to be done in 72 hours. So that is another requirement that you need to do. And other than that, what are the steps? How did you get to know? What are the steps that you're planning to take? All that information has to go in your initial filing, which you need a lot of time to collect that data because it cannot be wrong. Now, once you have crossed that milestone, you will have to have a closure. So you may have your forensics, then you will have your details. You have a timeline to file in your forensics also. Now, this is the best case scenario that you have done all the filings in the required timeline. Now, if you fail to do it within the 72 hours in the GDPR, then they will ask you to give supporting documents that in the last 6 months, did your DPO, DCO get a training? Are the people in your organization trained under privacy? This is a compliance requirement. If you don't do it, then obviously there would be action against you. Other than that, have you sent the SMS or communication to your users? That is another requirement. In CERT, they'll also come up with asking you for your logs. They'll also ask you that, okay, if you have sent the information, and people normally think that, oh, they will take time. No, CERT is very thorough in their job. So when they come to you saying that if you have sent this information, be honest. If you have sent, say yes. If you have sent part of it, and if you have not sent part of it, tell them that, yes, we sent this much, but this much is remaining. They will help. Literally, they will guide you how to do it. Do not put yourself in a position by saying that, oh, we did it, and then they will have proofs on your, like in your meeting saying that you have not done it. They are there to help us. So it's better that we be transparent. And at the same time, at the organization level, we need to have a checklist. That and also a committee. That's what I recommend normally, that you need to have a privacy committee. A management person needs to be there so that they know what is going wrong. Legal person obviously will be there. Then your infrastructure, and if you are lucky and you have a infosec team, then your infosec team will be there, and obviously your tech head. Now, these people are the people who need to first be informed about the incident that has happened, because they will checkpoint, because the management person, if you are a investor driven company, you have to inform them because it is gone in the news. They will be behind you to get the statuses. Your tech person will actually be the person working with third parties to get a forensic company to do the forensics to understand where the problem was. The third part is legal, to basically drive your communications with the authorities and take the front lead in having those conversations. And your infrastructure team to make sure that once the forensic comes in, the implementation for protection is done. Because when you file your closing report, you need to file that, okay, these were the issues that we found. This is what we did. These are the solutions. And this is the next progress that we are doing. And there are certain communication that also needs to go. So today, if you are thinking that, yes, just the training part or awareness, no, you have to have an action plan. You have a risk plan. You have to have a committee which is going to take lead over here. And those people will be the people who will know the situation. And they are also supposed to train. The other thing is, every department will have a privacy officer. Because today, be it HR, be it legal, be it finance, or be it tech, They handle a lot of information, even for that matter marketing. Today, if there is one person who is trained in the department, people can internally coordinate with that person to understand that how we can use it. And if there is a breach, they will come to know. And that person will become responsible to the committee so that it becomes, actions are taken immediately. So that is something which is very critical. So yes, all the precautionary measures and everything is fine. But to have a system which basically goes ahead and puts a risk, profiling at the same time, your steps. Because believe me, when it actually happens, you don't have time. You are literally in the last, like, oh, we have to have all these information. If these key people are not there, it will not work. You will not be able to match your timelines.
Very, very interesting, Denise. In fact, many takeaways, that I made a note of. But I think particularly the fact that every department should have its own privacy officer. I think that is particularly interesting. Also, the fact of how to deal with a cert, right? I mean, in India, we traditionally tend to have a very, we are always wary of the regulator, right? Or somebody in a regulatory position. Whereas with CERT, the right approach is to be upfront, to be transparent, and to tell them exactly what your situation is, rather than trying to kind of, beat around the bush or hide whatever you have done, sweep it under the carpet. All of those things would definitely not work. So I think they're all very, very useful and valuable takeaways. Denise, thank you so much. Akanksha, anything that you'd like to add, on this topic that, in addition to what Siddharth and Denise have sort of just brought out?
Yes. Besides what we are right now focusing, Anthony, is more on the online breach that happens on the data. Then of course, there are mechanisms, easy mechanisms to understand. But we also need to understand that we do collect, or some organization or some sectors do collect data physically. For example, if you visit to the hospital, you fill up the file, you fill up the form, you fill it manually, and you fill most of your vital PIs in over there, most sensitive PIs over there. That physical form might be roaming around in the hospital till the time you do not finish your appointment or the services that you are getting into. And the employee that is handling might not even care about what information is there or what is the importance of the information. You don't have that kind of security. So only focus should not be on the online breach, but a training. When we design a training should be departmental wise training also. So sometimes maybe a department who might be just doing a very simple work like filling up the forms, but they are the crucial data handlers in the organization. They need to be made aware about that. If something gets misused from you, what could be the consequences? Apart from that, I agree with Dennis that the emergency response team should be always be ready in an organization. They need to be trained well enough to handle both breach, online breach and physical breach, because we are quite trained to understand and handle online breach. But even our government fails to help us or to even rectify when the data breaches, maybe by stilling up the forms get misplaced. You don't have a solution for it. The IT Act is not talking about it, because we are much more focusing on the information technology, the innovation, and the online data. But what about this physical data which might be just lying somewhere in the warehouses? So that's the point that we need to ponder.
No, fair enough. I think data is data, whether it is in digital form, although the current bill, I think, contemplates only covering data that is in digital form, but nevertheless, data is data. And, I think it's something that organizations need to structure that data privacy policy to protect data that is both physical and digital in nature. I think no real questions or doubts about it. Okay, wonderful. So I think we have kind of come to an end of our session. This was like very, very a real learning opportunity, really, with all of the different perspectives that we have gotten to learn today. Before we close the discussion, I wanted to check with our audience, learners, if they had any questions for our panel, we could take maybe a question or two, and then we can close out this session. So I think AD has raised their hand. Maybe AD could ask the question directly. I can see Lisa has also raised a hand. Namrata, could you facilitate AD first and then maybe Lisa thereafter in asking their questions? Vimal has also raised a hand, so maybe in that order we can go and take 3 questions.
Yep. Thank you, Antony. Thank you. Hi. So AD is Abhishek here. So I also work for Novartis, same as Akanksha. So thank you. I think this was a good insight. I have 2 questions, one for Denise and one for all. One is around when Denise mentioned about, that when we design our policy, we should be agile enough, uh, uh, to customize whenever there is any changes happening in your, in your country or be it in your region, right? So how that can be implementable across the region then, because we have built that policy which is agile enough, right? But then how can that be implemented in that region, in that country, in a very very quicker way? Like we should have like road shows, or we should have, and how we should ensure that the training which has been provided, or the awareness program which has been scheduled, are gone through with all the associates.
I'll take the question, then you can start with your other one. So normally when it comes to these kind of things, you have training modules, and normally I work with Anthony's team to like make those modules and then have questions. And we design the questions in such a manner that those are not a straightforward yes or no answers. So first thing is, understand when you're designing the modules, you need to make it in such a manner that that result that comes in will actually give you an idea whether the person has understood the intent or not. That is one. Second thing is you need to have like many a times I will go ahead and have smaller trainings or discussion sessions with the team and focused on their areas. So that is something because for them it becomes very relatable. Otherwise, if I start like currently what I'm talking about, if I'm just having a conversation on privacy and the implementation, InfoSec team will understand. The tech team will understand, but the person who is from marketing or a person from other department, they will not be able to correlate. So you have to have examples, you have to have relatable content which they can understand. And that's when the implementation part comes in. And also it has to be a top-down approach where you should have your policies and all, where there is a repercussion. If you don't have a repercussion to something this critical, it will become very difficult for the organization to implement this, because if there is no accountability or if there is no consequences, people generally take it in a very lighter manner.
Completely agree. Thank you, Denise, on that. On the next point, actually, recently I've, as part of the NASCOM Center of Excellence, I've kind of attended one of the metaverse event. Yeah. So this is the question to all 3 of you. Maybe anybody can answer. Like, this is the new technology which is getting evolved, right? And we are seeing that the traction is moving forward in that direction, be it Web3 or metaverse. Yeah. Any thoughts on how can we implement the privacy piece here with respect to this evolvement of the in the technology? I hope metaverse is very much clear with you. It's not the meta, which is Facebook one. It's the metaverse environment where it's a virtual environment where you can visit and see and feel sometimes also. I've seen there was a cubic kind of a thing created where Maruti was launching its Brezza, and then you can wear a VR glass and feel of how that is getting launched. So I'm talking about that piece. Anybody?
I think any of you can take that question if you'd like. Akanksha, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you. I totally understand that this metaverse is a total upcoming, and it is going to stay. With the new innovation, I unfortunately metaverse have also bring in the criminal abuses along with it, because it is more from an experience point of view. Right now, we don't have a mechanism which could protect you virtually, and definitely the definitions which are protecting you physically in our criminal laws or in our jurisdiction needs to be worked upon and get applicable even uh, in this virtual world has enough. For example, now we have a virtual posh cases, right, which wasn't a case before COVID, but maybe work from home also has, we see virtual sexual harassment cases in the company. Similarly, I am very much sure that this metaverse is going to bring some of this elements along with it. And here the government should be ready for not just the IT data protection from the company's law, but also more other legislation which can give a remedy or a grievance if such incident happens to you when you are actually working on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Akanksha. Siddharth, Denise, do you have anything to add to it, or we can move on to the next question? If
I'll just add one thing, that considering it is a completely new field where we still don't know how far like it's going to be with the real scenario, like physical world as well as the meta. So this, I think, will come down to the judiciary as well as people like us who are in the in-house role to interpret the current laws in such a manner that we implement till the time something comes in. Like until the time we had, the bill is there, but we still bank on the IT Act, the rules that have come in. So similarly, there may be rules that may come in which may encompass the metaverse also. But yes, currently I think it is more on the interpretation and how you would want to put it, like the physical and the virtual is what we are looking at. Because like Akanksha said, POSH was not earlier, like it was mostly physical. Now there are other ways people are exploiting and coming under the, what you say, periphery of the law. So I would say that currently it's more for in-house counsel, it would be like a challenging and more interesting, I would rather say, an area to interpret the laws and see how it can be implemented in the metaverse until the time something concrete actually comes in.
Yeah.
understood.
And adding
Yeah.
to what Denise said, so currently now consumer be aware, right? So until unless we do not have a law in place, we do not have an infrastructure in place, and right now it is a developing technology. So it is up to the consumer that they be aware. And other than that, the organizations who are looking for solutions for privacy in the metaverse field, they should of course refer back to basics, that is our privacy principles, right? So refer to privacy principles, see how you can implement them, right? And then of course you'll find some solution there until unless we get a law or some kind of standards. Thank you.
So caveat emptor applies even in the even in the data privacy world. So fair enough. We have Lisa who's raised her hand. So Lisa, could we have your question, please? And then we move to Vimal. We have a couple more questions that have come in on chat. So I'd like to see if we can take all of them before we wind up. Please.
Yes. Firstly, thank you very much for such a wonderful and insightful session. It is indeed really helpful. My name is Lisa Vanchani. I am a student. I'm pursuing my postgrad in cyber law, and I'm also a practicing advocate at the same time. So again, I have two questions. First is, as we see that there are certain terms and conditions when we install a particular application, can there be an option where I can choose just partial selection of the terms and conditions, which means that if I don't want to accept each and every terms and conditions, but partly, so is there an option, or is it practically possible in the very first place?
Good question, Lisa. I don't think it's there, but we'll leave it to the experts to answer. I don't think any organization gives that choice today. But yeah, Denise, Siddharth.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I've drafted too many of the privacy policies. Privacy policy as well as the terms and conditions are the bare minimum requirements. So when I talk about privacy by design, I talk about how we are collecting. Those are basic information that we are required to collect to provide the service to you. Now, if we do give you an option, because see, there are certain things which are integral part of the app itself or the service itself. So today, if you have accepted something, all the apps will have an area where you can modify your privacy preferences. But there are certain mandatory requirements, like for Licious, we need your address. We can't provide you without your address. We need your phone number. We need your email address to give you the information. These are very critical and basic information that we need and we cannot do without. And without that, we are not able to provide the service. So yes, there would be a lot of apps which will take unnecessary information, but as required under the law, you have an option to go to your privacy setting and modify. But saying that I accept something and I do not accept something, part of it and other I'm not okay with, it's not something which is possible.
Fair enough. I think, and you've summed up really the position today. But I don't know. Hopefully, in the future, with lawyers and other great minds working on this, maybe we might get to something of a solution that Lisa had in mind. Yeah, Siddharth?
Actually, we have something similar for cookies now. So we have what we call a granular consent. So functional cookies, that is mandatory, right? Other than that, you have an option if you want your marketing cookies to run for you or not, right? So there we are seeing that you have the option to choose what you want, right, when you are giving a consent for a cookie. But for terms and condition of an application, I believe it is a long way ahead, long road ahead in front of us.
Agreed.
Just to add one thing to what Siddharth said, GDPR has come up with the option that I cannot make promotional and marketing cookies a auto tick. It has to be a positive action. So laws are coming in place where you are being given that bifurcation, where you can pick, if you like. Currently, if you go to some of the companies which are GDPR compliant, when you log in, you will have your terms and conditions, you will have to tick. You will also have a second checkbox, which is your marketing and promotional newsletters and all those communication. So GDPR has put in, and laws now are slowly and gradually coming towards the whole privacy by design, where you will get a bifurcation of what you are consenting to and what you're not.
Akanksha, do you have anything to add to that?
I just say that practically I think it's not possible to just admit terms and conditions. Let's say if we were in a physical world and if we buy some product, we buy along with entire terms and condition. Over there, we don't say that, okay, from this product, I don't want this feature, just remove it. We don't ask any shopkeepers to do that. Similarly, online platforms are something like this. So just it is online and it can be easily modified. We cannot just say that I don't agree to these terms and conditions. The terms and conditions are put there for betterment of both the consumers as well as the company to provide you the service. So if you want to avail a proper service, I guess bargaining with terms and conditions, it cannot be an option.
Mostly, as things stand, take it or leave it. For whatever reason, the way it's been designed, it is a take it or leave it as a situation. But hopefully, that might change in the future.
Might be.
All right. Sorry, Akanksha.
Yeah, might be. But right now,
yeah.
I don't see any way forward.
Fair enough. Vimal, you have a question. You've had your hand raised for a bit now.
Thank you, Rainmaker, Alex, and thank you the participants for sharing their insights. I have a very basic question. The DPO, whether he should be a person with a legal background or a tech background, and your rationale therefore.
Good question, Vimal. I've heard this. I've heard this a lot, but yeah, I'll let our panelists respond to that.
Denise could have a better view on it, being a legal head.
Although I suspect our panelists might be a tad biased,
So for my company, I'm already the DPO. So see, DPO, I would say it makes more sense to have somebody who has some knowledge about the regulatory standpoint. I'm not saying that you have a legal person. It's always advisable to have a legal person because they will know the regulation. They will know how to handle somebody from the tech background who is trained in the regulatory standpoint. That is also good, but I would still revert to saying that you have a DPO either way, but make sure that he's reporting to a committee of all the key stakeholders. So that will basically ensure that the regulatory as well as the business standpoints are covered.
Siddharth, Akanksha, I'm guessing you both are in agreement with that.
We align. We are
Yes,
aligned.
Antony. Yeah, and one more, like the key skills that a DPO should have. So as Denise has said, that of course they should know about the from regulatory standpoint. Other than that, they should be very good managers. I'll tell you, because they will have, because God forbid, when a breach occurs, they'll have to get in contact with n number of stakeholders internally and externally as well. So it is a big responsibility, of course, and it should, so a DPO should be a person, of course, who is very good at managing and is very good at communicating as well. So these are the two, I'll say, prerequisites, other than, of course, the technical knowledge that comes with the role.
And with lots of patience to add on.
It sounds like a full-time job and some. So yes, not for the faint-hearted.
I have known DPOs when there are breach, they actually take their bags and they stay in the office for almost a month, a week or 2 weeks, all straight together with no personal contacts at all.
Oh my God!
I've seen
Wow.
such DPOs working when a breach happens.
Wow.
It's that those time when it happens, it's a complete chaos. There's no timelines. There is nothing. You are literally constantly, not just internal stakeholders, outside stakeholders. And the reason why I always say that a legal person makes more sense is because when you're drafting the responses, you have to be very careful what you are saying. Because a lot of people I have seen in good faith, they will say, oh, yeah, this, that, and all. And then it will put you in problem. That's the reason why I would say somebody who has a background, but if it is a legal person, you will have that. And that is the reason why the committee will have all the expertise. This person is just communicating those expertise. And then it's always an option of like, if you don't know, you just go and say that I'll get back on that.
Fair enough. I just have, there are actually a bunch of questions that have come in, but I don't think we'll have time for all of it. So I'm just going to select two. Lisa, I'm sorry if you don't mind if I could pick up some of the questions that other participants have shared, and because we're out of time, we may have to just take two out of the many that have come in. So the first one to the panelists, whether an organization should undergo the ISO certification process, and does that help in any way in becoming compliant with any of the applicable laws? So do you believe the ISO is necessary to be also a data, an organization that's focused on data privacy and data enabled or privacy enabled, as Siddharth calls it? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are yes, somewhere, because it helps you give a branding. If you are a startup, it gives you a few guidelines on how to proceed because you are totally new in the market. And if you have that guideline, it helps you. I have been part of lots of RFPs when you want to have a global projects, and in those global projects, they definitely ask you whether you are compliant or not, and it is a brownie point to score. So practically, if you are into this procuring lots of global things that the global companies look into. So yes, for that purpose, for branding purpose, and to get a guideline in a starting, I think it won't harm you at all.
Okay, a good to have, a nice to have, might help with a number of things. Okay, Denise, your thoughts?
It's more of a safeguard because if you even read the IT Act, there are procedures and compliances that are given. So it's more of your defense mechanism that you have put in, that when there is a claim that, yeah, there is a breach or there is an issue, this basically is a substantive evidence, or rather will have more of an evidentiary value that, yes, you have done everything. So if there is a human error or if there is a problem, then in that case, it is only limited to that part. And in other part, the company gets a stand that, oh, they have done everything that is possible. So you basically save up on the penalties, as well as if there are any consequences, you are
Essentially showcases good corporate intent, I think, is what both of you are saying, Denise and Akanksha, that it shows that the corporation has an intent to protect information and privacy of the information that it has. Fair enough. Siddharth?
Yeah, I second what Akanksha and Denise has mentioned here. And other than that, moreover, it provides more like a structure to your security program or your data privacy program for your organization. So that structure is important and it is given to you by the standards.
Understood. Fair enough. And my last question, which I think is probably from an employee who's very concerned. The employee is asking, if an employee breaches the privacy provisions and such breach leads to a data leak, will the company be held vicariously? Will the company be held liable, or will the employee be punished in an individual capacity?
I think I'll take that. So you will have your privacy policy internally. You will have your code of conduct. So when it comes to dealing with the employee, it would be under the code of conduct. It would be a disciplinary action, or for that matter, a confidentiality breach. So the company internally will always take that. Considering it is an employee and it is on the company, yes, the company will be responsible. However, it will also depend on what sort of a breach it is, because the employee is responsible for the data. It is his breach, but at the end of the day, in a larger picture, it's the company, because you did not do the training or whatever reason. But yes, individually, the company can go behind the employee for maybe a data theft or unauthorized access, or maybe the person has shared their logins with somebody and somebody else has only done the act. But yes, the company can initiate action against the employee, but it would be more from the standpoint of a code of conduct or internal employment terms for that matter. But at the larger level, it's the company who will have to take the brunt of it.
So regulatory action against the company, and the company may take action against the individual in its own capacity. I think that's probably right,
Yes.
right?
And another thing is, under GDPR, if you are a DPO or a processor, and if you do that, then under the act, you are personally also penalized. So it also depends on what the employee is and what's the breach. I think Siddharth will be able to elaborate more from the standpoint of the penalties and all. But yes, it also depends on what capacity, what information, and are you a privacy officer? And are you responsible for it? Because if you delay and if you have not followed the law, under GDPR, there is a personal accountability also. And under Indian laws, there is also accountability from the standpoint of a company.
Understood. So the role that you play in the organization also matters in terms of affixing liability or responsibility. Siddharth, do you have anything to add to that?
I second what Denise has said. So if you are an employee, so it's a matter of so it becomes a matter of assessment then, right? So a breach has happened and you were at the center of it. How it happened? What was your responsibility? Did it happen intentionally or unintentionally, right? And based on that, of course, the organization will take action against you, and then the organization will have to, of course, report it to the maybe consumer and the supervisory authority as well. So yes, based upon so it's a so on case-to-case basis, we'll have to look at it. But of course, if you are doing it and you are an employee, there is some liability that is attached to it.
Perfect. Looks like we are all out of questions then. I think we can, it's almost 1. So I think we can also wrap up our session so that we can let our panelists off and get back to their day jobs. Thank you all so much for making time from your schedules to make time for this event. Denise, Akanksha, Siddharth, really been a pleasure. I think you've shared so many insights that I think pretty much everybody who's been part of this webinar has really learned a lot. So thank you all very much. I feel like we might have another one soon, maybe a month or 2 down the line. And, as we get closer to hopefully having a new law for India, a specialist law on data privacy and protection in India. So, yeah, so you can expect a call from us again to be part of our panel again, maybe 2.2 of this discussion where we go a little more deeper. And thank you to all the participants who joined today from their schedules. They've made time. It's a working day. Everybody's got stuff going on, but thank you all for still having made time to sort of attend this webinar. So once again, thank you, everybody, and stay well, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.